Ronaldinho, Neymar, Vini Jr. They're all the pinnacle of what we as football fans expect from Brazilian wingers. And when Barcelona signed Raphinha from Leeds, I think that's what a lot of us hoped to get. But the truth is, he's not that at all. During his first season at Barca, fans very much so disliked his inability to play as a traditional touchline winger, taking defenders on and getting the ball into dangerous positions like we were seeing from Dembele. That season, even though Raphinha was our second highest scorer and top assist maker on the team, we were still disappointed with his play. But this season, thanks to some changes by Xavi and some changes in our expectations as fans, well, Raphinha might have been our MVP of the entire year. That's a pretty lofty claim, so let's compare him to the two front runners apparently for the Ballon d'Or, Jude Bellingham and Vini Jr. This season in La Liga, Raphinha has a higher goal contribution rate per 90 minutes than both Vini and Jude. Raphinha has 6 goals and 9 assists in 1,307 minutes, while Vini has 15 goals, 5 assists in 1,700 minutes, and Jude has 19 goals and 6 assists in 2,200 minutes. Now, Raphinha has played considerably less minutes than the two of them, meaning his sample size is smaller as he has been a sub a lot this season, on top of having a few injuries. But this just shows that, at least in La Liga, Raphinha is more effective statistically than both Jude and Vini in the minutes that they play in. And I honestly think they're the best players to use in a comparison with Raphinha, because Raphinha plays as a sort of hybrid of both Vini and Jude Bellingham. Vini is a touchline winger that comes central every once in a while to affect play, while Jude has played a lot like a false 9 this season while dropping into midfield to help defensively more so than Vini does. Raphinha's new position in this squad today is a combination of all that those two players do. Earlier this season, with the emergence of Lamine Yamal, Raphinha was frozen out of the right wing position, but as the year went on, we saw Xavi experiment with the Brazilian whenever Barca were struggling to score, usually late in matches, bringing Raphinha on to double up on the left flank, allowing Lamine to overlap and Raphinha to underlap, usually putting balls in from the top of the box or taking a rip onto his left. Moving forward throughout the season, I think they realized that Raphinha can be elite in those half spaces, so Xavi started implementing him on the left, where he can cut in, play as that inside pseudo second striker like I continue to say every time I talk about him, allowing Cancelo to overlap and be that touchline player, while Raphinha stays on the inside and does his thing. That is very similar to where Jude plays, and we still see Raphinha sometimes playing as a more traditional left winger, say when Cancelo is maybe defending or out of position or what have you. So that's where I get the comparisons with both Vini and Jude. He's playing a similar position as both of them. We've seen in recent games, Raphinha occupies the central position so much so that Lewandowski seems more like a winger at times than Raphinha does, and Raf has some decent ability centrally as well. He makes a ton of runs in behind that aren't necessarily picked out very often, especially when Frankie and Pedri aren't further up the pitch to make that pass, but he does move defenders around, and that opens up space for the forward, which helps to create more chances for us. In all competitions this season, Raphinha has 22 goal contributions, the second most in the team to Lewandowski's 33, while Raphinha has played in about half the minutes that Lewandowski has. And honestly, I could see his stats being even better if he played more this season as that left winger, but because he was tied to the right wing for so long earlier this season, we didn't see a ton of that. In Xavi's new tactics, Raphinha has a ton more freedom than he used to, no longer being tied to the touchline, taking on players, which he is not very good at, and he doesn't really ever have to take anyone on at all, and floats in a much freer role that gives him more space to shoot, which is where he's been the most effective this season. Obviously, besides his fantastic runs in behind that have saved us a lot this year. But nothing he's done this season sticks out to me more than his goal in the first leg against PSG in the Champions League. It was truly a work of art. That entire play was brilliant, but for Raf to finish that first time on his weak foot in the most important game of the season thus far, man, that's just a moment of brilliance that Barca have not been able to come up with since Messi left enough. That goal-scoring capacity is probably something we didn't expect from him when we originally signed him, because we wanted him to be kind of a better Dembele, but we should have seen this coming because Raphinha has scored good goals before for Leeds and then at Rennes in France, as well as in Portugal for Sporting and Vitória. He can score. He can be a goal scorer, more so, I believe, than Dembele. And that's not something we expected from him. And honestly, something we really didn't expect from him when he came in is his ability off of the ball. I praised Firmino for the exact same thing in the last video, but Raphinha runs and fights to win the ball back like few do in this side. Not only does he have the energy to do it, but he also has the tenacity to come back and defend like we saw from Griezmann a few years ago. That may be the biggest difference he has over those usual elite Brazilian wingers. He is definitely very defensively sound. Not only could he probably play as a left back or a right back, as I recommended in my last video, and we even saw it in a match this season, but he can fit into a high pressing side very well with his aggression and ability to maintain that aggression throughout the match. But the fact is, Xavi's side is not a high-pressing side. They try at times, but it rarely works, especially without Gavi. And usually this just leads to Raphinha wasting his energy, but it's a good thing he has a ton of it because he just keeps going, and it's very nice to see guys fighting for the badge over and over again like Raphinha always does, and he deserves a ton of credit for it. The craziest thing about Raphinha this season, though, to me, is that he makes a ton of mistakes. It seems like every single game he plays, I'm frustrated at him for something, usually forcing a pass at the wrong time or taking a poor touch, and that just shows how insane his stats could have been if he made slightly better decisions. Sometimes he makes incredible passes, sometimes he makes perfectly timed runs, but a lot of times he's just a little bit off in his connection with his teammates, so if that were even just slightly better, his stats could have literally been at the very top tier of world football this year. But to be fair, I don't think this is necessarily all on him. When Barcelona played Real Sociedad a little while ago, Raphinha had a solid match, influencing the game well, putting in hard runs and pressing like nobody's business. But when Ferran Torres came on, I thought the forward line with Raphinha and Ferran linked up a lot better. When Raf came central and Ferran Torres shifted wide instead of Lewandowski, it just made sense and worked out better, obviously, because Ferran has been a winger for most of his career. Of course, he's gonna be better than Robert Lewandowski out there. But his link-up play with Raphinha was just significantly better, and that led to a very exciting and dangerous front three, on top of just the energy that Ferran can bring that Lewandowski just can't. Obviously, we lose the finishing ability of Lewandowski. I'm not arguing here that Ferran is anywhere near Lewandowski in his finishing ability, but that creativeness, that link-up play, and that energy that they all have that Lewa doesn't, I don't know, it's nice to see in this side. However, no matter how good Raphinha is this season, I don't know if he's going to be a Barcelona player next year. I know, a lot of people are calling for Ferran to be sold instead and to keep Raphinha, but Ferran isn't worth as much, and we still owe a lot of money to City for his transfer, so it's basically not worth it for us to sell him, especially if Xavi wants Roque to move elsewhere to improve and get playing time, because then who's going to deputize for Lewandowski? Gu still needs a lot of time to develop, and so with the potential of signing of Xavi Simons as well, that leaves us with a lot of heads in very similar positions, and it makes me worried about Raphinha. The Brazilian has been the most elite this season in those half spaces and as that pseudo second striker, and that's where Simons is also very good, though he can play a lot deeper and honestly all over the pitch. Now it is interesting because Raphinha has chosen not to take on another agent, which he could have done when his other agent Deco had joined Barcelona's management team. He could no longer work with Deco, but he chose not to sign another agent. We could look at that as Raphinha trying to be like Kessié, who decided to help the club by leaving, bringing in a transfer fee, and allowing the club to move past him because he wasn't going to be utilized, suffering himself to help the club. I could see Raphinha doing something similar, but I could also see Raphinha saying, I don't need an agent because I'm not going anywhere. Raphinha has the power to refuse to leave, and he could stay, and we're stuck. We can't sell him. It is what it is. Nevertheless, I think this side is going to have to make a big sale this summer, and it's probably going to be Raphinha or Frankie de Jong. Xavi has said that Frankie de Jong is firmly in his plans for next season. I don't think I've seen the same for Raphinha, and Xavi has also come out saying that he wants a pure left winger. That is very clearly next up on the list of things Xavi wants after a pivot. That is literally the position that Raphinha is playing in right now. He's not a pure left winger in that position, and I think Xavi wants one instead. And I don't know where that leaves Raphinha. He's too valuable to be left on the bench, and he's just maybe not the profile Xavi wants, even though it's working well. He's linking up well in those half spaces. I don't necessarily think we need that touchline winger unless it's a depth signing, but then if we get a winger there and we have Xavi Simons come on loan as well, Raphinha's minutes might not be too high next season, and I don't know, it's just a lot of bodies. I think it can be managed well, but it's concerning with his value, especially because it's a lot of money to not be starting. If we can get 75 to 80 million for a player, or he sits on the bench for half the time like he did this season, I don't know. Everything begins to add up at that point. If all of these signings and incoming players work out, the outside forwards in this squad will be Ferran Torres, Raphinha, Lamine Yamal, potentially Ansu Fati, Nico Williams, and Xavi Simons. That's a lot of heads to compete for basically just 2 spots. If Ansu does go on loan, it's less concerning because Raphinha, Ferran Torres, and Xavi Simons are all very flexible and versatile players that can play in several different positions, including the midfield and striker, but it's just a lot of guys with a lot of uncertainty about where they're going to play, unlike a lot of the best teams have. You look at Manchester City and their forwards, you have guys where they are certain this is where they are going to play. You have Erling Haaland, and then you have a guy who comes in for him, Julian Alvarez. That's where they play, and sometimes they both play and they play in a similar position. You also have wingers in Grealish and Doku that play on the left side, Foden, Bernardo Silva that occupy a similar central position, and then Kevin De Bruyne that does it all. It's very clear what they're doing. It all makes a lot of sense. With this side, it doesn't yet, and we're speculating a lot, but it's concerning to me because of how good Raphinha has been and the desire he has to play for Barcelona, to stay at Barcelona. I'd feel just bad as a human being who would love to play for the club myself. I just, to see him go, I don't think it's fair to him, but I understand why he should. I've also been a proponent of selling him in the past, but looking at it a little bit more objectively right now, I don't know how to feel, and I don't know what to expect. Literally anything could happen. With this team desperately needing a pivot, I think they're going to have to spend 50 to 60 million on one, and that money is going to have to come from a player. I just don't think we're going to have that in the budget from whatever levers Laporta pulls. I think we're going to have to sell players to make signings this year, and the fullback sales and the Clement Lenglet sales is going to bring in 4 pence. That's not enough to make those big signings. I'm worried it's going to be Raphinha, but let me know what you think. If you enjoyed this video, jump on over to this video all about the insane season Fermin Lopez is having, or check out this video about whatever YouTube thinks you'll be interested in. Again, thank you for watching. Visca Barca. I'll see you in the next one. Peace.